Good morning, everyone. I want to call the hearing for Committee on Labor and Tourism. We have a number of bills to go through, most of which are collective bargaining bills. Today is Thursday, March 17th, 9:30 a.m., conference room 312, via in-person and video conferencing. First up on the agenda is SB 3129, I'm sorry, Vice Chair, sorry. We are now having live testimony, and so we want to make sure everybody's aware of our committee rules for the hearing. So Vice Chair, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. In order to allow as many people to testify, there will be a 3-minute time limit for testimony. We'll be taking testimony in order of in-person testifiers to online testimony. Please keep yourself muted and your video off until it is your turn to testify. If you are having technical difficulties, please use the chat function to contact our technical staff. However, if you are disconnected, please rejoin and we will resume your testimony if time permits. Please refrain from profanity or uncivil language, as this behavior would be grounds for removal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Okay, first bill up is SB 3129, SD1, relating to the Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund. It appropriates funds into the Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund effective July 1st, 2050. And as we all know, that's a effective date. But first up is Department of Labor and Industrial Relations, Joanne Bindehar. Oh, sorry, Director.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Ann Eustachio, Department of Labor Director. I'm testifying this morning on this bill of great importance to the department. I'm testifying in support of Senate Bill 3129, which provides an appropriation to the Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund and allows the DLIR to infuse cash into the fund. The department wants to note that the infusion of funds into the UCTF does not create an ongoing effect on reducing employers' tax rates beyond 1 year. The contribution fund must be redetermined and a new establishment of the adequate reserve and the solvency is determined on an annual basis depending on the amount in the trust fund. Thank you for allowing me to testify, and I'm here for any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. We also have Tina Yamaki, Retail Merchants of Hawaii.
Aloha and good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to testify. We are in very strong support of this measure. Measures like this would especially help our small local businesses survive. Retailers are doing everything possible to keep their doors open and their employees employed. So we are very much appreciative of this bill. Mahalo.
Thank you, Tina. We also have testimony from Department of Budget and Finance, Craig Rai, with comments. Is there anyone else here to testify on this bill? Oh, Craig, you're here. You want to testify on this bill?
Morning, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. I'm Craig Rai, the Director of Finance. We'll stand on our written testimony.
Thank you, Craig. Sorry I didn't see you there in the corner. Okay, is there anyone else here to testify on this bill? If not, members, are there any questions? Okay, if not, we're going to be moving on to the agenda part where we have all these collective bargaining bills. So what I'm going to do is, except for bargaining unit 1 and 9, who have already come to terms with the employers on their collective bargaining contract, we're going to be taking all the rest of the units together because they have not yet settled their contract. So we're going to be taking unit 1 first, then unit 9, and then followed by testimony on all the rest of the bargaining unit bills. So first up is SB 2782, SD1, relating to public employment cost items, provide appropriations for collective bargaining cost items for the members of Unit 1 and their excluded counterparts, including the cost of salary adjustments negotiated between the state and the bargaining unit representatives for fiscal biennium 2021 to 2023. First up, we have Craig Hirai, Director of Budget and Finance.
Morning, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. I'm Craig Hirai, Director of Finance of the State of Hawaii. We'll stand on our written testimony and support.
Thank you, Craig. Let's see. Via Zoom, we have United Public Workers, ASHME Local 646, UPW, Dan Kochi. Dan,
Good morning. Yes, can you hear me, Chair?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Chair Onishi, Vice Chair Sayama, members of the committee. Dan Kochi, on behalf of our State Director, Kalani Warner, for United Public Workers, will also stand on our written testimony in strong support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Members, we also have testimony from the University of Hawaii, Calbert Young in support, and Hawaii Health Systems Corporation, Linda Rawson, President and CFO, also in support. Is there anyone else here to testify on this measure? If not, members, are there any questions? Okay, if not, let's move on to Bargaining Unit 9's bill, which is SB 2790 SD1, related to public employment cost items, provide appropriation for collective bargaining cost items for the members of Unit 9 and their excluded counterparts, including the cost of salaries, the cost of salary adjustments negotiated between the state and the bargaining unit representative for fiscal biennium 2021 to 2023. Okay, first up, Craig Wright, Director for Budget and Finance.
Morning, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. We'll stand on our written testimony and support.
Thank you, Craig. Okay. Members, we also have testimony from University of Hawaii, Calbert Young in support, Hawaii Health Systems Corporation, Linda Rosen, President and CFO in support, and the Hawaii Government Employees Association, Randy Pereira, Executive Director in support. Oh, I'm sorry, HTA.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Happy St. Patrick's Day. It's nice to see you all in person again. Michelle Kurihara Klein on behalf of the Hawaii Government Employees Association and on behalf of our Executive Director, Randy Pereira. I apologize for not filing our testimony as an in-person. I had only done that for the first unit. But as you have our written testimony before you, you know that our Unit 9 registered professional nurses were able to ratify a successor contract, and the contents of which can be found in Senate Bill 2790. We strongly support passage of this measure, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that any committee member may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, anyone else here to testify on this measure? Okay, if not, members, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none. Members, we're going to be taking the following bills all together because these are bills that provide for the collective bargaining contract agreements, but have not yet been settled. So the first bill, the bills are SB 2783 SD1 for Unit 2, SB 2784 SD1 for Unit 3, SB 2785 SD1 for Unit 4, SB 2786 SD1 for Unit 5, SB 2787 SD1 for Unit 6, SB 2788 SD1 for Unit 7, SB 2789 SD1 for Unit 8, SB 2791 SD1 for Unit 10, SB 2792 SD1 for Unit 11, SB 2794 SD1 for Unit 13, SB 2795 SD1 for Unit 14, and SB 2796 SD1 for Unit 15. So we're going to go through the testifiers list for all these bills. And the testifiers for your appropriate units, you can testify for those which are included in that list I just mentioned. So first up, go back to the beginning. Okay, so Cranky Rye, Budget and Finance.
Chair, committee members, I'm Craig Wright, Director of Finance. I think on all of those bills except for Unit 15, Senate Bill 2796, for which we have comments, we support the rest of them.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Yes, the members, just for your information, Unit 15 are basically county employees. So that's why Budget and Finance is not testifying on that particular bill. Next up is University, HTA, Michelle.
Good morning, Michelle Kurihara Klein on behalf of the Hawaii Government Employees Association in strong support of the following measures. Senate Bill 2783, 2784, 2785, 2787, 2789. We had already covered 2790, 2794, 2795, and 2796, each of which represent funding vehicles for the bargaining units that HGEA represents. And as Chair had mentioned, and we will confirm, there have been no agreements reached for any of those aforementioned listed bills. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, next up here to testify is United Public Workers, ASHME Local 646, UPW. Dan?
Good morning again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Dan Kochi from United Public Workers on behalf of our State Director, Kalani Warner. We stand in strong support of SB 2791, which is for our bargaining unit 10 members. As you did mention, Chair, we are still in the middle of negotiations, but happy to answer any questions, and we'll continue to keep the committee updated on how those go. And we appreciate you guys continuing to move these bills throughout the negotiations.
Thank you, Dan. Next up is Hawaii Firefighters Association, Celeste Nip. Celeste, are you there? Okay, she's not here. Members, we also have testimony from the University of Hawaii, Calvert Young, regarding the units that they have in the university system. We also have Hawaii Health Systems Corporation in support, and we have Hawaii Health Systems Corporation, Linda Rosen, for the bargaining. She's the president and CFO for Hawaii Health System Corporation. They're in support of the bargaining units that are in the hospital system. We have testimony from, oh, I'm sorry I missed you, Laverne. Hawaii State Teachers Association, Laverne Moore. Laverne, are you there?
Yes, yes. Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. Laverne Moore speaking on behalf of Osatui Jr., HSTA President. We strongly support Senate Bill 27A6, SD1. Although Bargaining Unit 5 has a contract in place, there are possibilities, upcoming negotiations for possible contract adjustment, extension, and vehicle bills may be necessary if an agreement is reached requiring an appropriation prior to the end of the legislative session. And Chairman Onishi, please support our bills coming through for the educators, Bargaining Unit 5. We really appreciate your support and we're looking forward to working with you. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Laverne, and I'm very sorry I missed your Zoom testimony. I also missed Christian Burns, University of Hawaii Professional Assemblies testimony. Christian, are you there?
Hi, it's Debbie Hartman, Chair Onishi,
Debbie.
for and in behalf of Christian Fern. Thank you so much. We appreciate your committee hearing our bill, Senate Bill 2788, Senate Draft 1, and we stand on our written testimony that the committee will support passage of this bill. And I'm here if you have any questions. Thank you so much and a happy St. Patrick's Day. I love your green tie.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie, and I apologize for skipping you guys initially.
No worries, just pass the bill. Thank you.
Let's see. Okay. I believe that's all the written or in-person or Zoom testimony we have. Members, is there anyone else here testifying on these bills? If not, members, are there any questions? Okay, if not, I believe we are on our final bill. Yes, we are on now SB 3289 SD1 relating to the Hawaii Retirement Savings. Establishes the Hawaii Retirement Savings Program administered by the Hawaii Retirement Savings Board in consultation with the Department of Budget and Finance and Department of Labor and Industrial Relations to provide a state-facilitated payroll deduction, automatic enrollment, individual retirement plan to private sector employees who do not have access to employer-sponsored retirement savings plans beginning July 1st, 2024. It appropriates fund and is effective July 1st, 2050, and we all know that's an effective date to continue discussion. Okay, so first up, we'll get to the right bill. Okay, first up to testify, Department of Health, Executive Office of Aging, Caroline Cardri.
Chair Onishi and Vice Chair Sayama, I'm Debbie Shimizu for the Executive Office on Aging, speaking for Director Caroline Karirao. We stand on our written testimony supporting the intent of this measure and offer comments. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next up, Craigie Rye, Budget and Finance.
Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, I'm Craig Uri, Director of Finance of the State of Hawaii. We have our written testimony with comments. Basically, we're proposing to work with the board on a three-phase implementation plan and are requesting appropriation of $750,000, $500,000 for due diligence study, and $250,000 for 2 full-time staff. Well, I think that's it. Then we're available to answer questions.
Thank you, Craig. Okay, next up, we have Kathy Betts, Department of Human Services, State of Hawaii Director on Zoom.
Morning, Chair. Scott Nataswani with Department of Human Services. Department stands on its written testimony, providing support and offering comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Department of Labor and Industrial Relations, Dan Pereira Escafio.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Ann Eustachio, Director, Department of Labor. We are in support of this measure, and we have comments, and we defer to the Department of Budget and Finance regarding the fiscal and administrative impacts of this measure. And I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Next up, we have the Hawaii Government Employees Association, Michelle.
Oh, thank you, sir. We'll stand on our written testimony as a part of the measure.
Thank you. Next up, we have the Policy Advisory Board for Elder Affairs, Gary Simmons, Chairperson.
Simon, thank you, Chair Onishi, Vice Chair Sayama, and members of the committee. I'm Gary Simon, the Chair of the State's Policy Advisory Board for Elder Affairs, more frequently known by its acronym PAVIA. Thank you for hearing and supporting the bill. I just want to emphasize 2 points. Some opponents of the bill argue that a financial literacy and education program is enough to increase retirement savings. However, research by the Pew Charitable Trust in its work with many states over the years has found that financial education on its own has not consistently shown the ability to increase savings or financial well-being. The second point I would like to make is that some of the opponents argue that the bill does not include educating employees on the program. However, the bill includes language that the program includes fully informing both employers and employees when the program launches. The specific text is on page 8 of the bill, and I'm quoting, "The board shall have powers and duties in accordance with law to develop and disseminate information designed to educate participants and the public about the benefits of planning and saving for retirement and help them decide the level of participation and saving strategies that may be appropriate." Of course, PAVIA is in strong support of the bill. And again, thank you for hearing and supporting the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have AARP, Kaylee Lopez.
Aloha, Rep. Onishi, Chair Onishi, and Vice Chair Sayama, and committee members. First of all, I wanted to thank you for holding the hearing on this really important legislation. ARP has been working with many of the supporters, the House and the Senate, to get the legislation this far, and we appreciate that it's gotten this far. Look forward to the passage. The important thing that you know, and I know you support, Rep. Onishi, is the fact that creating a retirement savings program for the 200 plus thousand private sector workers, to have there be an easier process for people to be able to save through their employers is critical for Hawaii's financial stability. One of the things noted in a more recent report by the Pew Charitable Trust is that MedQuest already at this time has expenditures for elderly residents estimated at $296 million for 2020. And it's estimated to grow to $550 million under the current demographic and saving trends. Increased retirement savings will not eliminate this, but it will reduce the outlay. The effect of the expenditures in Hawaii from insufficient retirement savings is estimated to be 56 million in 2020 and rise to 106 million in 2040. And that's where the cumulative cost for government is attributed partially to insufficient retirement savings, totaling 1.72 billion from 2021 to 2040. So it's clear, that more, as you already know and have told me, Rep. Onishi, having people save for retirement is important. We believe that this is a program that can help make that happen. Appreciate your support. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Tax Foundation of Hawaii, Tom Yamaki.
Good morning, Chair Onishi. This is Jade McMillan on behalf of Tom Yamachika and the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We will stand on our written comments submitted on the measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Jade.
Thank you.
Next up, American Council of Life Insurers, Oren Chikamoto.
Good morning, Chair Onishi and Vice Chair Sayama and members of the committee. My name is Oren Chikamoto and I represent the American Council of Life Insurers. And as I stated in my testimony, ACLI opposes this bill. You may note in my testimony that there are basically just two arguments that I make. I won't dwell on them. You have my testimony. The first is where we are in terms of retirement savings generally for small employers. And I state that under the Secure Act, there's no question that these plans are out there. They're available to small employers. So really what we're talking about then is a plan that is mandated basically that focuses on the employee and mandatory contributions being made by the employee to fund his own retirement. The thing that struck me was that under this bill, it clearly comes out and says that the state has a role in this thing. Certainly the big responsibility here is the board. They're responsible for really its implementation, design, and administration, with the assistance of the Department of Budget and Finance and in consultation with the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. All of these bodies that are actively involved in the administration, design, and implementation of the program have absolutely no liability for any losses that are suffered by the employee participants. And I state in my testimony that the result of this really is a function of the recent Supreme Court ruling, which dismissed the lawsuit that was filed in California. As a result, the specific holding of the United States Supreme Court was that ERISA does not apply to these kinds of plans. As a result, what's being created here is a retirement savings program for which there is no recourse against anybody. So the person that is going to suffer for this, and I think I may have put in an example about the board, messes up on its investments. Now, as a result, normally what you do is you look at who's responsible for the loss. Here you can look for it, but there's no solution for the employee. And that's really the bottom line. One of the, I think, big problems with this particular act. And with that, what I'll do is I'll stop and I'll entertain any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors, Cynthia Kakenata.
Morning, Chair Onishi, Vice Chair Sayama, members of the committee, Cynthia Takenaka on behalf of NAFA Hawaii. I will abbreviate my testimony for sure, but I'd just like to highlight that we still feel that there's better use of state resources for education and outreach efforts instead of this kind of plan. we have, on page 3 of my testimony, we have outlined the Secure Act of 2019 that was passed by Congress, so I won't go through that. Our other concern deals with the Alice household and low-income workers that could be disqualified from the government benefits such as SNAP, SSI, Medicaid, and their housing subsidies, as these kinds of retirement accounts are considered assets that will be figured into the qualification. And we also would like to see language that would prohibit current employers with retirement plans from canceling their workplace programs to join the state-run program for X number of years. We don't have any specific number. And as Mr. Chikamoto said, since the state and its agencies and employers are free from contractual or fiduciary liabilities, with ERISA, you know, it sets minimum standards for retirement plans. It guarantees national uniformity, then states doing their own thing. And so these employees are not going to be getting the ERISA protections that people with private plans have currently. And I'm sure other people will talk about costs, et cetera. So those are our main points. Thank you for allowing us to share our views. And we ask that the bill be held in committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Retail Merchants of Hawaii, Tina Yamaki.
Aloha and good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to testify on this measure. You know, we support the intent of this measure. I don't think anybody wants to see our kapuna, you know, struggling after they retire. But we also have talked to a lot of, especially the small businesses in and around town and here in our local communities. And a lot of them have told me they have not recovered from the pandemic. They still have soft sales. They still have huge debt. Our international visitors aren't back, so they're not really spending money. You know, we've seen where we're in a recession right now, where in the last 12 months, we've seen prices go up 7.9%. It's estimated that next year it's going up another 5.4%. You know, shipping costs have gone up anywhere from 300 to 1,000%. You know, the House and Senate is talking about minimum wage increase. And now with the war in the Ukraine, we're also seeing it having an impact on our rising prices. And a lot of us have seen that when we go fill up gas or buy groceries. So our smaller business are trying to figure out how are they going to pay for something like this? Well, they want it. It's right now, they just can't afford something like this. And you know, we don't want to see them close. We want to see all businesses remain open and employ as many employees as they can. So mahalo for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next up, we have Dan Garner, individual.
Good morning, Chair Onishi and Vice Chair Siyama and members of the Labor and Tourism Committee. My name is Dan Gardner, and I wanted to make this statement, please. Today, many of our retirees find themselves in dire need with little or no savings for retirement. And without positive action, this serious problem will only worsen. The recent state-sponsored task force on retirement security in Hawaii found our retirement community growing faster than our workforce. This means more retirees needing support and relatively fewer people paying for it. A new study translated this disparity into $1.7 billion of increased state costs over 20 years. Noting a worker is 15 times more likely to save when able to do so at work, the task force recommended development of a state-facilitated retirement savings program for the estimated 215,000 workers here whose employers don't offer one. We are asking your support to enact a Hawaii retirement savings program modeled after plans already working successfully in California, Oregon, Illinois, and being started in a number of other states. SB 3289 SD2 legislation would significantly support both Hawaii's future retirees and help better manage the tax burden for us all. You know, most people don't want to be asking for a helping hand when they're retired. The Hawaii Retirement Savings Program will help prevent this necessity. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have Barbara Craig in support in person.
Morning, Chair Onishi, Vice Chair Sayama, members of the committee. My name is Barbara Krieg, and I thank you for the opportunity to testify in person today in strong support of this bill. I've submitted written testimony in which I've outlined the reasons that I believe the bill is very important, or the program is very important for employees, for employers, and for taxpayers. What I would like to do in this hearing is to share some personal observations about why and how I believe the program will work. My first observation is from my 3 years as director of the Department of Human Resources Development from 2011 to 2014. In that role, I was responsible, and my department was responsible for the oversight of the Hawaii Deferred Compensation Plan. That plan is very similar in structure to the proposed Hawaii Retirement Savings Program before you. I served on the Board of Trustees for 3 years. We obviously were very responsible and very careful on our oversight, but it wasn't just the Board of Trustees. Through the procurement process, there is always a financial advisor, a professional company, at the time it was Mercer, with their own responsibilities and potential liabilities if they did not act the way they should. We also procured during my time on the Board of Trustees a contract for a new administrator. There's always a plan administrator. And our selection at the time was Prudential, and my understanding is that Prudential is still the program administrator today. They did an excellent job. Between my excellent DHERD staff, the financial advisor, the Board of Trustees, and Prudential, many thousands of employees joined that plan, which, keep in mind, is a plan that is optional for employees in addition to Social Security contributions and in addition to the mandatory contributions to the ERS. Prudential was primarily responsible, as in the primary responsible party, for the outreach to employees, which was all of the state employees, including the DOE and UH, and most of the county employees. They did that through mailings, they did that through emails, they did that through an excellent website, they did that through benefit fairs, and they did that by scheduling, at the request of the employees, individual counseling sessions. The DHERD staff supports all of that, and by the time I was on the Board of Trustees, the program was able to not only be self-supporting, which it had been, but to also, instead of relying on general funds for the DHERD support staff, to support one position. And by the end of my time on the Board of Trustees, the program supported the salaries for 2 positions. So no longer using general funds to support the program. Based on my experience, employees in every bargaining unit joined that program. And as was the case at the time, presumably now, not all of those employees are very high earners. Some of those employees are unfortunately relatively low earners. Yet they still elected to contribute to that program, to that plan, in addition to their other programs. Also along those lines, I have to say, it's not only ERISA that gives protection to any investor in any program. In the case, in this case, state employees, and in the case of this proposed program, other employees. Just because there is no ERISA coverage does not leave individuals without any legal recourse if there is negligence or mismanagement, both through the contractors and through general negligence laws. My second personal observation is that most people, not all, but most people will adjust to reduce take-home pay when they join payroll-based retirement savings programs. When I first was offered the opportunity to work at the state, the salary that I was offered was less than half of what I had been earning in the private sector. So I took a long and hard look at whether I could afford, my husband and I could afford to maintain all of our obligations while taking on that reduced salary. We looked at it, I wanted to do it. We were able to set our budget that we thought we could make it work, just barely, but we could make it work. Then I started working at the state at DHERD and found out for the first time that 6% of my salary was being deducted for the ERS pension, which I had not realized. I had no opportunity to opt out, and I had no opportunity to adjust that deduction. Yet I made it work. You get accustomed to it, you work within your budget. The proposed program here is better than the ERS pension program in the sense that it does offer employees an opt-out option, and it offers employees at any time the ability to adjust their contribution amounts so that they feel comfortable that they can work within those restrictions. My third personal observation is if we offer more savings programs, people will take advantage of those savings programs. An example being, as I said, the deferred compensation plan. I myself, when I went onto the board and learned about the deferred compensation plan, joined that for the first time when I thought I couldn't afford that either. I am very, very grateful that I am retired today because I'm able to be retired today because I rely on ERS pension, plus Social Security, plus individual retirement savings from both the deferred compensation plan and my years in 401k plans with private companies. Every resident of Hawaii should have the same opportunity to have multiple options for retirement savings. And unfortunately, too many of our residents don't have that option. For those reasons, I'm a very strong supporter of this plan, and I do respectfully request that you support the plan and establish a Hawaii retirement savings program. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Members, those are all the individuals that indicated they would be here to testify. Is there anyone else that's here to testify on this matter? Yeah, please come up. Please give us your name.
Chair Onishi, Vice Chair Sayama, members of the committee, my name is Barbara Service. And I would just like to, I did submit testimony, unfortunately late. I'd just like to support what others have said and please help small business employees in this state to enjoy the benefits that others get to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. We do have your testimony. Anyone else? Okay, members, are there any questions? Yes, Representative Takayama.
Question for Barbara Krieg. I just wanted to follow up on your testimony, and you spoke as a former state director of
Correct.
DHERD. One of the arguments made by critics of this proposal is that these accounts would be considered assets and thereby possibly render them ineligible for certain social services. I know you made reference to the fact that the deferred compensation include some employees who are lower income. So what are your comments to these criticisms?
Well, an asset is an asset. Whether the money's taken from the paycheck or an auto deduct program are in a Hawaii Retirement Savings Program account, whether they're in a regular bank account, they're still an asset. Is having an asset a reason not to save? I mean, if an individual employee is on the cusp of losing eligibility under this program is drafted, they do have the opportunity to opt out and not have that asset. And I think that that's the decision that the individual would have to make. They have to weigh the longer term, having sufficient funding for retirement versus having to work longer and not being able to retire versus the cost of whatever benefits they receive at that particular time and how long they need to have those benefits.
Thank you.
Members, any further questions? Oh, yes. Okay.
For,
Representative Malani.
thank you. Budget and Finance Director. This is in some ways a follow-up to the concern about how this might impact individuals who might be beneficiaries of various programs. So when you propose a phased-in approach, what are some of the criteria along which you might phase in the program to address some of these concerns?
The plan would be to work with the board, go over, what the was going to be in and out, and work through that and do some due diligence studies too about the operation of the program and how it's doing nationally.
I would suggest, I mean, so where my question is going is that I think these are very valid concerns. And AEW has partnered with the San Francisco Federal Reserve Board, which they've created this really robust data system that allows us to see how our population is affected by various policies and programs, things like increases in the minimum wage, access to beneficiary programs, and now something like this. And so I think the approach that Budget and Finance is proposing, when you guys work through the implementation phase, I can see one of the criteria being, as you roll this out, right, there's different kinds of employees that you might be looking at, right? There's going to be the people who are kind of more higher middle income that for some reason, maybe their employers are not offering retirement plans, but then you have that bulk of people who may be at that minimum wage. And then these questions about beneficiary status are very important. So that I think a phased-in approach is somewhat wide. I'm agreeing with you. So I want to put that into the minds of some of the people who are going to be implementing this, because I think how we roll this out for different groups of employees is very significant.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you want to put it in the statute, in the act, but you could put it in the committee report.
Okay. The one other question, there was some indications in here in some of the testimony that different states are having different experiences with this. And I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but since you're the subject matter expert, it looks like Oregon has run into some problems and they've had to terminate some kind of plan or something. Has that invalidated their program generally, or what? Do you know anything about that experience?
I think the group was working with Oregon. I'm not exactly sure what you're referring. That's part of what we were going to do in the due diligence too. I thought Oregon was okay, but we've been talking to people from Oregon. So, like I said, that's why we were going to do the phase program.
Okay, I just want to make sure that, other states are being held up as different examples, but I do think Hawaii is unique because we are so small. And so that as this is looked at by others, as it's implemented by other states, I mean, the hiccups we know are existing. So it's a program that we need to monitor.
And we're also looking at perhaps getting some kind of consortium or consortium administrator, possibly looking at those alternatives rather than seeing. We think it'll be as part of the due diligence. We think it might be more economical and more feasible if we do that as a consortium with some other states. We've done that in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any further questions? Okay. If not, we're going to recess for decision making. Okay, we're calling back to order the hearing for the Committee on Labor and Tourism. On our first measure, SB 3129 SD1, the chair's recommendation is to pass this bill as is. Members, any question? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 3129 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Chair, Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Bellotti.
Aye.
Representative Holt, excused. Representative Kobayashi, excused. Representative Quinlan, excused. Representative Takayama.
Aye.
Representative Okimoto.
Aye.
Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Okay, on the second bill, SB 2782 SD1, the recommendation is to pass this measure out as is.
Okay, voting on SB 2782 SD1, recommendation is to pass as is, noting the excused absence of Representative Holt, Kobayashi, and Quinlan. Do any members vote with reservations? Any members voting no? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, members, the next bill, SB 2783 SD1, we're going to rephrase section 14 to say the fiscal year 2021-2022 appropriations or authorizations under this act shall not lapse until the end of the fiscal biennium 2021-2023, provided that funds are appropriated or authorized by that are not expended or encumbered by June 30th, 2023 shall lapse as of that date. Members, are there any questions? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2783 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absences of the representatives mentioned before. Do any members vote with reservations? Do any members vote no? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Okay, members, on SB 2784 SD1, we are making the same rephrasing to section 14 of this bill. Members, any questions? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2784 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absences of the representatives. Do any members vote no? Any members vote with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. On SB 2785 SD1, we are making the same rephrasing recommendation to section 14 of this bill. Members, any questions? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2785 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of the representatives. Do any members vote no? Any members vote with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, on SB 2786 SD1, we're going to be making the same rephrasing recommendation, but this time to section 6 of this bill. Members, question? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2786 SD1, noting the excused absences of the representatives. Do any members vote no? Any members vote with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. On SB 2787 SD1, we're going to make the same rephrasing recommendation to section 6 of this bill. Members, any questions? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2787 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of the members. Do any members vote no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Vice Chair. The next bill, SB 2788 SD1. We're going to be making the same rephrasing recommendation to section 6 of this bill. Members, any questions? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2788 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, knowing the excused absence of some members. Do members vote no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. The next bill is SB 2789, SD1. We're going to be making the same rephrasing recommendation to section 6 of this bill. Members, questions? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2789 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, knowing the excused absence of the members. Any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, on the next bill, SB 2790 SD1, the recommendation is to pass this measure out as is. Members, any questions? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Chair's voting on SB 2790 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass as is, knowing the excused absence of the members. Do any members vote no? Any members voting with observations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, the next bill, SB 2791 SD1, we are going to be making the same rephrasing recommendation to section 14 of this bill. Members, questions? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2791 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, knowing the excused absence of some members. Do any members vote no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, on SB 2792 SD1, we're going to be making the same rephasing recommendation to section 14 of this bill. Members, questions? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2792 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, knowing the excused absence of some members. Do any members vote no? Any members vote with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, the next bill is SB 2794 SD1. We're going to be making the same rephrasing recommendation to section 14 of this bill. Members, questions? Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2794 SD1, the Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, knowing the absence of some members. Do any members vote no? Do any members vote with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. The next bill is SB 2795 SD1. We're going to be making the same rephrasing recommendation to section 6 of this bill. Members, any questions? Not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2795 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of some members. Do any members vote no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next bill is SB 2796 SD1. We'll be making the same rephrasing recommendation to section 14 of this bill. Members, questions? Not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2796 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, knowing the excused absence of some members. Do any members vote no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Okay, the next bill is SB 3289 SD1. Before I make my recommendation, just wanted to say that I was a non-voting member of the Employee Retirement Savings Task Force, and that was convened to study this issue and propose a program. I had concerns of the program that would mandate employees to be initially signed up for the program and have to opt out, instead of a program that an employee would have to choose to participate in. I was also concerned about the impact to low-income families that are living paycheck to paycheck and having their take-home pay reduced every month. This impact was not addressed by the task force. And finally, I believe that the federal government's work on the Employee Retirement Savings Program may have options that could provide a better program or laws to allow states to develop better programs. And it seems imminent that they are poised to make changes to the Federal Secure Act. With those concerns and issues, I am making the following recommendation. We'll be passing this measure out with the following amendments. We are amending the language in the bill to make this plan that will still require all employers to participate. However, the employees must make an affirmative election to opt into the plan. We are deleting section 4A4 and creating a new subsection under section 4 to read, the board shall develop and disseminate information designed to educate covered employees about the impacts of opting into the program on take-home pay, saving strategies, and the benefits of planning and saving for retirement to help cover employees deciding whether to participate and at what level participation might be appropriate. We are adding the three-phase approach as recommended by Budget and Finance, and the board will report back to the legislature upon the completion of the survey outlined in phase 1. We will be placing the board under the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations for administrative purposes instead of Budget and Finance. We will be amending language as needed to allow the board to determine the time frame for the development and implementation of the program. We are deleting section 6B on page 14. We'll also want to put in the committee report that we are recommending funding to be at $75,000, $750,000, but we will be letting Finance Committee decide what the operational cost should be, as well as the number of staffing and positions required to effectuate the program. And lastly, we'll be making any technical amendments as needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, are there any questions? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 3289 SD2, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of the previous representatives. Any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Thank you to the public for coming to testify. This hearing is adjourned.